So, um, I want to give some. I want to extend the olive branch with this one because this is one of those things that does irritate me too. But his conclusion, I most certainly disagree with. Uh, he says, uh, religious people essentially tell you to believe stuff without question. And that is definitely one of the things that irritates me within religions is that they tell you to believe without question. And this is it, don't question it. Uh, but I don't think that that is necessarily something with religion, but it is just something that happens all throughout humanity, even in politics. Uh, there are people who just hear certain things from a politician or their political party that just take them, and it's not something that's exclusive to religion. But I don't like it either way that it happens, uh, and I believe that the religion that one reason why I particularly myself am Christian is because Christianity can actually survive in a society that allows questioning. Like Islam, you really can't question Islam. It must exist as a public religion. It will not thrive as a private religion as Christianity has. It can't stand to higher criticism like Christianity has. And so I definitely believe that that adds to the perceived veracity or even just the likelihood that Christianity is more true than Islam because it actually can stand critique, although many people within Christianity cannot withstand critique because they actually don't know that much about their religion. Like I said, that is annoying. But at the same time, uh, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case that things must be taken, blindly, and this is it, don't question it. But a little bit of that makes me think that Ricky Gervais has had a somewhat of a poor upbringing or something. Like if his parents were raising him like that, just do this, believe this, don't question it. It gives me the idea that maybe Ricky Gervais was raised Christian and his Christians didn't, and his parents didn't know how to answer some of his questions. He might have been more intellectual than them, and they hadn't grown, and he was upset because he was told to just do this and obey and not question it. But that is more related to bad parenting than than something that is uniquely religious. So, moving on.
Your wife loves you. I think for most religious people, the evidence that there's a God is rather like that.
When you say that your wife loves you, and you're getting evidence from looks in the eye and catches in the voice was the phrase that I actually used, and the questioner said that's the way religious people feel about God. Yes, they feel that about God, but there's no evidence that they're getting any cues at all. I mean, their God is an imaginary God inside themselves. They feel that they're getting little looks from the eyes of God and sounds from the voice of God, but why should we believe them since we can't see or hear any evidence to that effect? When we're talking about...
Okay, so on that part, I can't really comment on it because it's difficult to know what that guy in the audience was getting at since I didn't hear the context that was previously whatever was said, and I don't know exactly what he means as far as the analogy connecting to the love and um, that's how we feel about God. So I'm just gonna skip by that part. I don't know what that guy was trying to argue, nor do I know what Richard Dawkins said earlier.
About moral philosophy, when we're talking about the origin of the cosmos, when we're talking about the origin of life, when we're talking about why we all exist, there is no reason whatever why we should treat the writings of scribes in whatever it was, 800 BC, 600 BC, as being particularly wise. We could listen to Confucius, we could listen to the Buddha, there are all sorts of people we could listen to, and we could listen to modern philosophers as well and modern scientists as well. Once again, I come back to the point, there is nothing special about the Bible.
Claps. That one was hard to understand what his point was. I don't know if he was saying that the modern people are the modern science and the modern philosophers are just as valid as the scribes, which doesn't seem to be like something I would clap for because it's not really a point for his side, I guess, or whatever. It seems to be like, well, I choose this and you choose that. But typically, what is happening in these situations, I don't know if he's doing this. Like I said, I can't be certain. Is that there's kind of a chronological snobbery. I think C.S. Lewis coined that term, maybe. But it's the idea that the modern people are superior to the people before us, right? So it's not like we're standing on the shoulders of giants and people have we have learned things from our forefathers. It's more like we're better than them uh, because we have this viewpoint from a higher plane, right? We're higher up, so we're superior, even though that the only way we got there was by the previous wisdom that was handed down by those individuals. So it's possibly, well, we're better because we have iPhones, iPads, and we have Windows service tablets and all this technology. So we're superior thinkers. When ironically the advances in technology, in my assessment of modern day, has contributed greatly, at least in America, to the ignorance and stupidity of our society. And so I'm less inclined to say that people today are smarter than Socrates or smarter than Jesus or smarter than, Confucius and etc. So if he is getting at that, I definitely would disagree. But let's move along.
That people are making this up. Now, of course, you can make the argument, well, God planted the God module in the brain so he could talk to us or something. How come we all seem to talk to different gods then? Are there just a bunch of them out there and they're competing for our brains? Why is it, as Dan Barker pointed out, there's very little agreement amongst believers? Why is that? So my conclusion then is that as you think about the House vote tonight, again, what's more likely? It's obvious that all these other gods are made up. You already know that. You agree with me on that. You're all atheists for all those other gods. So I would just implore you to go one God further. Thank you.
So claps again. But it's interesting. He said, why do, if we have an intuition about God that's implanted in us, why does everybody disagree with the nature of about what the nature of God is and who God is and such? Why do people disagree on that subject? And it kind of it overlooks the idea that people disagree on everything. Why aren't people united on God? Uh, I would say because people are just not united. it, why doesn't everybody believe that capitalism is the best, or socialism is the best, or Donald Trump is the best, or the that Mahatma Gandhi is the best, or Mother Teresa is the best, or why do people believe that um, you know that you should have egalitarianism versus all the various viewpoints? He's saying, why don't people agree on God if we all have this knowledge? But that's almost to say that no, everything that people disagree upon, we have no knowledge of which way to go. Which I guess maybe in essence is what his argument is, but it isn't exclusive to religion. And I guess what I want to say here is that maybe the reason why people disagree and why people have a different conception of God is because their idea of God comes from themselves. And if everybody's idea of God comes from themselves, then God is just a exalted view of themselves, or the ego, or the super ego, you could say. And so whenever people come to think about God, if God is just the superego of themselves and they are an individual, then everybody will be divided on the nature of God. And I believe that's a problem with humanity, regardless of whether you talk about God, which is why people are so divisive. Especially me being in America, I can see that. People are very divisive. People are divided, black against white, male against female, gay versus straight, Christian versus non-Christian, denominations against denominations, uh, uh, you know, whether you should, global warming or not. It's so divided, and people make big deals about it too. And so what happens is the xenophobia that exists shuts down the conversation. And why don't people agree? Because no one's listening to each other. Everybody is essentially doing what's right in their own mind, and there's no unifying factor. And now I don't want to say none, but where the problem he has and the consternation that he's expressing has a lot to do with the fact that people often don't listen to themselves, and if they do even listen, like, at all, they don't listen carefully. They don't listen deeply. They don't listen actively. And so and he would be one of the people who did it himself, because apparently he hasn't listened to what Mormonism is enough to know that Joseph Smith is not the latest prophet. So he is actually participating in one of the things that causes this division within religions, because there are people who actually think that within other religions. So imagine I'm a Christian and I'm like, Joseph Smith is the latest prophet, and I try to make an argument off of that. Uh, that would cause division, and I would shut down what this person has to say, possibly because I think I'm right and I'm not willing to give him an ear of what the reality is. But the reason I say that is because he did that himself, and what you have is an atheist making the mistake that divides and shuts down communication between human beings, justifying himself in doing so, or I don't want to say justifying, but he's seemingly being okay with it, and if he's aware of it. I think it'd be easy to find out that Mormons don't believe that Joseph Smith is the last prophet, but I'll just extend him some grace there. But it's the same thing that many religious people do. No one's communicating and listening to each other, so that's the problem. And let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so I guess that was it, and hopefully you got something out of there. And it's funny that this is titled "Some of the Best Arguments Against Religion," because if this is where we're at as the best arguments against religion, then religious people, you really don't have your. I wouldn't say you have your work cut out for you. Um, looks like it's fairly easy to kind of communicate what's going on, as long as they're willing to listen, because that's essentially the problem with us, the religious, right? That we don't listen. But it, if he is willing to entertain the idea that essentially some of the perceived arguments against religion that are so awesome and so powerful and no one can answer them, that maybe they're not that great, maybe there's some errors, and maybe they haven't been exposed to the person who can actually explain it to them. Maybe that's possible too. There's a lot of ignorance all around, religious or not religious. And so what I would hope is the guy, maybe Wonderful Truth, if you want to respond to this video, or anyone else, go ahead and comment in the section, and tell me where you think I went wrong, if that's the case, or congratulate me on addressing these things with fairness and accuracy. And I like to hear from you guys. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.